I was 7 years old the first time I watched a man's life get stolen from him with a pen. I didn't understand what I was looking at back then. I just remember my grandfather's hand shaking. 33 years later, I watched it happen again. Same house, same table. And this time, I was the only one who recognized what was really going on. My name is Daniel. In 1993, my grandfather Walter was 74, sharp as ever, head of a family that looked a lot happier from the outside than it actually was. My mother, Ruth, was his only daughter. She spent every weekend at his house, cooking his meals, driving him to appointments, listening to the same 3 war stories over and over without complaint. My Uncle Frank visited twice a year and called it family. But Frank had a story he told himself. He believed Ruth had spent 20 years managing their father, steering him, softening him up, making herself indispensable so the house would end up hers. It wasn't true. But Frank needed it to be true, because the alternative was admitting he'd simply shown up less. I remember Walter's house. It smelled like pipe tobacco and old books. I remember sitting under the dining table while the adults talked above me, invisible, the way children are when grown-ups think no one's paying attention. That's how I saw it happen. One afternoon, Frank showed up with a man in a gray suit and a leather folder. "Just paperwork, Dad," Frank said. "Nothing to worry about." My grandfather looked confused. He asked where my mother was. Frank said this would only take a minute, that she didn't need to be bothered. I watched my grandfather's hand shake as he signed, page after page. I watched Frank's hand rest on his shoulder the entire time, not comforting him, steering him. 2 months later, my grandfather passed away in his sleep. When the will was read, my mother got nothing. Not the house she'd cared for, not the savings she'd helped him manage. Everything went to Frank. My mother never contested it. She said fighting would have broken what was left of the family. She said some things aren't worth the cost of winning. I was too young to understand that. I just remember her crying in the car, and me not knowing why. What I never told anyone, not even her, is that I blamed myself for years. I was 7, I couldn't have stopped it. But some part of me still believed that if I'd screamed, if I'd said something, it might not have happened. Fast forward to this year. I'm 40. Frank is 86 now, and it's his turn to need care. His daughter, Elena, has spent the last 6 years doing exactly what my mother once did: cooking, driving, sitting through the same stories. 2 weeks ago, my phone rang at 9 p.m. It was Elena. "I don't know if this is nothing," she said, "but something feels wrong." She told me Mark had started visiting more. Every week now, instead of every few months. Always with a reason, checking on Dad, helping with bills, just being a good son for once. Then, 2 days ago, Mark asked her to take Friday off. Said he wanted some time alone with Dad. Elena thought maybe it was guilt. Maybe he finally wanted to help. "But he never asks me for anything," she said. And he sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced saying it. That Friday, she came back early, said she forgot something in the kitchen. And there it was, Mark, sitting across from Frank, a man in a suit, a folder. Frank confused, asking where Elena was. "I froze in the doorway," she told me. "I didn't even say anything. I just backed out and called you." I don't know why I called you specifically. I just knew you'd understand what I was looking at. I felt something go cold in my chest, because I had seen this exact scene before. Same choreography, same hand on the shoulder, same words. Just paperwork, Dad. Nothing to worry about. My hands were shaking on the wheel the entire drive over. 33 years old. That fear. And it still fit exactly the same. I walked in before anything was signed. Mark turned on me first. This isn't your business, Daniel. Family paperwork. You weren't invited. I was under this table the first time this happened, I said. I remember more than you think. The lawyer tried to close it down fast. Sir, this is a private consultation. I'll have to ask you to. Same firm, I said. You represented Frank in 1993, when he did this exact thing to my mother. Ask him. Frank's face went hard. You don't know what happened back then. You were a child. I know what I saw. And I kept the notes. I kept my mother's letters. Every date lines up. Mark laughed, too loud. This is insane. Dad, tell him this is insane. But Frank wasn't looking at Mark anymore. He was looking at the folder on the table, at the pen, at his own hand. And for the first time in 33 years, he was on the other side of that scene. The room went silent. The lawyer quietly closed his folder. Frank spoke next. Quiet, not to Mark, to me. You were under the table, he said. It wasn't a question. Frank asked everyone to leave the room, except me and Elena. He told us he'd built a story for himself over 30 years, that Ruth had manipulated their father, that he was owed the house for staying loyal to the bloodline. I believed it because I needed to, he said. It's easier to believe you were cheated than to admit you just weren't there. But watching Mark do it to him, watching his own son reach for the same pen, the same folder, the same quiet pressure, he finally understood exactly what it had cost her, and what it had cost him, pretending it hadn't. 2 days later, Frank called an independent lawyer, not the family one. He rewrote his will himself, with Elena present the entire time, no one standing behind his shoulder. He left the house and the savings to Elena, who had earned them the same way my mother once had. And in a paragraph nobody expected, he added a formal, written apology to my mother. Decades late, but real. My mother read that letter sitting at her kitchen table. She didn't cry the way she did in the car 33 years ago. This time she just said, "Better late than never," and put the kettle on. I think about that 7-year-old under the table sometimes. He didn't understand what he was watching, and he spent 30 years quietly blaming himself for staying silent. But he remembered every detail anyway. And 40 years later, that memory was the only thing strong enough to stop history from repeating itself. Some debts take half a lifetime to come due, but they still come due. If you were the kid under the table, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments.